This passage goes with questions 1 through 6 on the Unit 1 test, Literature with a Purpose. Surrender Speech by Black Hawk, 1832. Black Hawk was a chief of the Sauk Indians. Though the Sauk had forfeited their lands east of the Mississippi in an 1804 treaty, Black Hawk believed the treaty to be invalid. Angered by the loss of their lands and by incoming white settlers, Black Hawk led a brief war against U.S. forces. While Black Hawk won an initial victory, his warriors were defeated. Black Hawk surrendered 15 weeks after the conflict began. You have taken me prisoner with all my warriors. I am much grieved, for I expected, if I did not defeat you, to hold out much longer and give you more trouble before I surrendered. I tried hard to bring you into ambush, but your last general understands Indian fighting. The first one was not so wise. When I saw that I could not beat you by Indian fighting, I determined to rush on you and fight you face to face. I fought hard, but your guns were well aimed. The bullets flew like birds in the air and whizzed by our ears like the wind through the trees in the winter. My warriors fell around me. It began to look dismal. I saw my evil day at hand. The sun rose dim on us in the morning, and at night it sunk in a dark cloud and looked like a ball of fire. That was the last sun that shone on Black Hawk. His heart is dead and no longer beats quick in his bosom. He is now a prisoner to the white men. They will do with him as they wish, but he can stand torture and is not afraid of death. He is no coward. Black Hawk is an Indian. He has done nothing for which an Indian ought to be ashamed. He has fought for his countrymen, the squaws and papooses, against white men who came year after year to cheat them and take away their lands. You know the cause of our making war. It is known to all white men. They ought to be ashamed of it. The white men despise the Indians and drive them from their homes, but the Indians are not deceitful. The white men speak bad of the Indian and look at him spitefully, but the Indian does not tell lies. Indians do not steal. An Indian who is as bad as the white man could not live in our nation. He would be put to death and eat up by the wolves. The white men are bad schoolmasters. They carry false looks and deal in false actions. They smile in the face of the poor Indian to cheat him. They shake them by the hand to gain their confidence, to make them drunk, to deceive them, and ruin our wives. We told them to let us alone, but they followed on and beset our paths, and they coiled themselves among us like the snake. They poisoned us by their touch. We were not safe. We lived in danger. We were becoming like them, hypocrites and liars, adulterers, lazy drones, all talkers, and no workers. We looked up to the Great Spirit. We went to our great Father. We were encouraged. His great counsel gave us fair words and big promises, but we got no satisfaction. Things were growing worse. There were no deer in the forest. The opossum and beaver were fled. The springs were drying up, and our squaws and papooses without victuals to keep them from starving. We called a great council and built a large fire. The spirit of our fathers arose and spoke to us to avenge our wrongs or die. We set up the war whoop and dug up the tomahawk. Our knives were ready, and the heart of Black Hawk swelled high in his bosom when he led his warriors to battle. He is satisfied. He will go to the world of spirits contented. He has done his duty. His father will meet him there and commend him. Black Hawk is a true Indian and disdains to cry like a woman. He feels for his wife, his children, and friends, but he does not care for himself. He cares for his nation and the Indians. They will suffer. He laments their fate. The white men do not scalp the head, but they do worse. They poison the heart. It is not pure with them. His countrymen will not be scalped, but they will, in a few years, become like the white men, so that you can't trust them. And there must be, as in the white settlements, nearly as many officers as men, to take care of them and keep them in order. Farewell, my nation. Black Hawk tried to save you and avenge your wrongs. He drank the blood of some of the whites. He has been taken prisoner, and his plans are stopped. He can do no more. He is near his end. His sun is setting, and he will rise no more. Farewell to Black Hawk. At this point in time, please pause this recording until you have opened up your Unit 1 Literature with a Purpose exam and moved to question 1. Question 1. How have Black Hawk's cultural experiences shaped his view of white people? They have fueled in him great animosity and dislike towards white people. They have taught him to sympathize with the difficulties of white people. They have made him uncertain about how to feel about white people. They have allowed him to fully understand white people. Answer question number 1. Question number 2. How does Black Hawk's rhetoric in this excerpt advance the viewpoint selected in question 1? Don't forget, use this excerpt below to help check your answer to question 1. The white men despise the Indians and drive them from their homes, but the Indians are not deceitful. The white men speak bad of the Indian and look at him spitefully, but the Indian does not tell lies. Indians do not steal. Parallelism contrasts the dishonorable behavior of white people with the admirable conduct of Native Americans. Alliteration emphasizes the morals and values of the Native Americans. An extended metaphor draws a comparison that suggests Black Hawk's thorough understanding of white people. Personification captures the confusion Black Hawk feels when dealing with white people. Please choose an answer to question 2. Question 3. How did the experience of witnessing the, quote, white men who came year after year to cheat Native Americans and take away their lands, end quote, shape Black Hawk's viewpoint? It led him to believe that violent resistance to white people is both necessary and justified. It created a sense of apathy, leading him to believe that nothing can be done to reverse the damage. It solidified his prior belief that Native Americans are good and incorruptible at their core. It encouraged him to embrace his own death so he can serve as a moral beacon to guide fellow Native Americans. Choose an answer to question 3. Question 4. How does Black Hawk use rhetoric in this excerpt to advance the viewpoint selected in question 3? Again, use this question to help check your answer to question 3. Quote, things were growing worse. There were no deer in the forest. The opossum and beaver were fled. The springs were drying up, and our squaws and papooses without victuals to keep them from starving. We called a great council and built a large fire. End quote. He presents an antithetical statement, making a connection between two opposite ideas to use contrast as a means for justification. He uses allusion, referencing an event, person, or literary work that justifies his actions by demonstrating precedence. He appeals to emotions and sentiment to distract his audience from the needs for justification in favor of angering them so they agree with his actions. He uses ethos, suggesting his behavior was an ethical and just reaction against the deceitful and immoral behavior of the white men. Please choose an answer to question 4. Question 5. How does Black Hawk use rhetoric in this line to advance his purpose? His heart is dead and no longer beats quick in his bosom. Is it he refuses repetition, reinforcing his experience as a doomed captive by repeatedly referring to the fate he assumes he will soon meet? He uses hyperbole, exaggerating his feelings of defeat by describing the experience as death, indicating to the audience that the two feelings carry similar weight. He uses ethos, demonstrating his willingness to die for what is ethical and good to express to his audience the importance of sacrifice. Or he uses logic, stating his feelings in a way that requires his audience to make a logical connection between experiencing defeat and experiencing death. Choose an answer to question 5. 6. How does the phrase, quote, his heart is dead, quote, affect the tone of the line His heart is dead and no longer beats quick in his bosom. Does it establish a weak tone about compliance? Does it set a frank tone about physical malfunctions? Does it set a severe tone about the extent of the impact? Or does it establish a hopeful tone about compromise? Please choose an answer for question 6, then spend some time reviewing questions and answers for numbers 1 through 6 before continuing on to the next passage on your test. Don't forget to stop and ask your teacher if you have any questions,